In this episode, we're going to talk about role separation in Cloud IAM in a way that keeps two goals balanced at the same time, stopping privilege creep and keeping delivery moving. Beginners sometimes hear separation of duties and imagine it means adding friction everywhere, slowing teams down, and making normal work painful. That fear leads to a common failure mode where teams keep a few broad roles because broad roles are convenient, and then privilege creep quietly grows until a compromise becomes a major incident. The better approach is to design roles as a set of clear lanes, where each lane has a purpose, a boundary, and a predictable path for exceptions. When role separation is designed well, it actually improves delivery because people spend less time guessing what access they need and less time waiting for ad hoc approvals. Our goal is to give you a mental framework for role separation that is both secure and workable. Before we continue, a quick note. This audio course is a companion to our course companion books. The first book is about the exam and provides detailed information on how to pass it best. The second book is a Kindle-only ebook that contains 1,000 flashcards that can be used on your mobile device or Kindle. Check them both out at cyber.author.me in the Bare Metal Study Guide series. Role separation starts with the idea that not all actions carry the same risk and not all actors have the same exposure. Human users make mistakes, but they also need flexibility, while workloads are exposed to software vulnerabilities and should be tightly constrained. Some actions are low impact, like reading logs, while others are high impact, like changing access policies or modifying network exposure. Privilege creep happens when a single identity or role accumulates a mix of these actions over time, often because the role is used as a general tool for many tasks. Separation is the practice of breaking that mixed role into roles that match distinct responsibilities, so each role can stay small and stable. When you do that, adding a new permission becomes a deliberate choice tied to a specific lane, rather than a random addition to a catch-all role. A useful first step is to separate roles by actor type, meaning you design different role families for humans and for workloads. Human roles should be designed around job functions, such as operators who need to observe systems, engineers who need to deploy changes, and administrators who manage identity and platform settings. Workload roles should be designed around application tasks, such as reading from a specific storage location, publishing to a specific message stream, or writing to a specific database. The reason this separation matters is that the threat model differs. Workload compromise is common enough that any broad workload role becomes a likely escalation path. If a workload can modify its own permissions or reach widely across resources, then a small application vulnerability can become a cloud takeover. By keeping workload roles narrow and human roles more controlled and auditable, you align access design with realistic risk. Within human roles, another key separation is between everyday work and elevated administration. Everyday roles should cover normal tasks like viewing dashboards, reading logs, and making standard changes through approved processes. Elevated roles should cover the rare, high-impact actions like modifying IAM policies, changing guardrails, or altering network boundaries. If you combine everyday tasks and elevated tasks in one role, then that role gets used constantly, and constant use of high privilege is exactly how accidental mistakes and attacker abuse happen. A better pattern is to make elevated access explicit, time-bound when possible, and tied to a clear reason. This design does not have to be burdensome. It can be as simple as separate roles with separate assignment processes. The important point is that high privilege should not be the default posture for day-to-day delivery. Now consider separation by environment boundary, because privilege creep often happens when roles are reused across development, testing, and production. Teams will often start in development with broad permissions to move fast, and then those same roles quietly get reused in production because it is convenient. That is a classic privilege creep story, and it is dangerous because production resources and data are the most valuable targets. Role separation should therefore include environment-scoped roles that prevent a development identity from automatically having production power. This is not about mistrust. It is about reducing blast radius and aligning access with the sensitivity of the environment. If a compromised developer account can reach production directly, then the line between environments is mostly imaginary. Strong role separation makes environment boundaries real by designing distinct roles and distinct assignments for each boundary. Separation by action category is another way to stop creep, especially when combined with clear resource scoping. Think of action categories as read, write, manage, and grant, where grant includes permissions that change who can access what. Many roles need read and some need write, but far fewer should need manage, and very few should need grant. Privilege creep often sneaks in through grant-like permissions, because once an identity can modify access policies or attach roles, it can create its own escalation path. When you design roles, you can deliberately keep grant permissions in a small set of tightly controlled roles, rather than allowing them to spread widely. That way, teams can still deliver features with read and write access to the right resources, but they cannot casually alter the security boundary. If a role's purpose does not include access management, it should not include access management permissions. Another important design idea is to separate roles by resource domain, meaning you avoid building roles that span unrelated systems. A role that can manage storage, compute, network, and identity all at once becomes a powerful single point of failure. It also becomes a magnet for privilege creep because any new requirement can be solved by adding another permission to the same role. Instead, roles should map to narrow domains, such as application deployment, storage operations, or monitoring. When you separate by domain, you also make auditing easier because it is clearer why a permission exists. Domain separation supports delivery because teams can request the exact domain role they need rather than negotiating a one-off set of permissions every time. It also supports incident response because you can disable a domain role to contain impact without breaking everything. One reason role separation breaks delivery in poorly designed systems is that people do not know which role to use, so they request broad access to avoid being blocked. That problem is not solved by relaxing security. It is solved by making roles understandable and predictable. Roles should have clear names that reflect their purpose, and access requests should map cleanly to those purposes. If a role name is vague, people will use it for anything, and creep returns. If roles are too granular without guidance, people will be confused and will demand a universal role again. The sweet spot is a manageable catalog of roles that match real workflows, each with clear scope and minimal overlap. When you design role separation with human usability in mind, delivery accelerates because access becomes a routine, not a negotiation. Exception handling is also part of role separation because exceptions are where creep is either contained or allowed to spread. In a mature design, exceptions do not result in permanently expanding a baseline role. Instead, exceptions are handled through temporary access or through a special break glass style role that is used only for urgent needs and is monitored tightly. The key is that exceptions should leave evidence, expire, and trigger review so they do not become the new normal. When exceptions are handled by editing the main role, creep becomes inevitable because every urgent request adds another permanent permission. A delivery-friendly approach is to provide a safe, known path for urgent work that does not require rewriting role definitions. That keeps the baseline roles stable and keeps security from becoming the enemy of progress. Role separation should also account for the delivery pipeline, because pipelines and automation often need powerful access, and that power can become a major risk if not separated carefully. A common mistake is giving the pipeline a broad administrator role so deployments never fail, and then leaving that role in place permanently. A better pattern is separating pipeline roles by stage and purpose, such as building artifacts, deploying to a specific environment, and performing limited infrastructure changes. Each stage gets only what it needs, and the most powerful actions are isolated to the smallest number of identities. This reduces the impact of pipeline compromise and reduces the chance that a developer mistake in pipeline configuration grants broad access. Delivery improves because the pipeline's permissions are stable and known, reducing surprises, while security improves because the pipeline is not an unrestricted superuser. Another powerful way role separation stops privilege creep is by enabling better monitoring and better anomaly detection. When a role has a narrow purpose, its activity pattern is predictable. If an identity assigned to that role suddenly starts doing something outside that purpose, it stands out. If a role is broad and does many different things, unusual actions blend in. This is why least privilege and detection support each other. Role separation is not only about preventing access, It is also about making misuse visible. That visibility helps in incident response because you can identify which role was abused and what it was supposed to do. And you can contain impact by adjusting a small role rather than tearing down a giant one. This is a delivery benefit as well, because containment becomes more surgical. As we close, designing role separation that stops privilege creep without breaking delivery is about building access lanes that match real work, stay stable over time, and keep high-risk capabilities tightly controlled. You separate by actor type, so workloads remain narrow and humans are managed with clear job-based roles. You separate everyday work from elevated administration, so high privilege is not constant. You separate by environment boundaries, so development access does not become production power by convenience. You separate grant-like permissions into a small controlled set, so escalation doors do not spread. You design roles that are understandable, domain-focused, and supported by safe exception paths so teams can move quickly without expanding baseline roles. When role separation is done this way, delivery becomes smoother, privilege creep slows down dramatically, and the environment becomes more resilient when real attacker pressure arrives.
Thanks for listening. For more audio courses, daily newsletters, and more, please visit DailyCyber.News.